things that I have prayed and just would give anything to see in 5 years, I've seen it now in 4 weeks. By day 2 of life, Luke started to go into a coma. The first 6 months of Luke's life were very traumatic, to say the least. He was in the hospital every week. We would get out for a couple days and be back. His pneumonia was just never really managed. For 6 months, he stayed at a brain damaging level. Every time I would see a doctor, they just pick one diagnosis to fixate on. So Luke has been given a diagnosis of CPS1, he's had a liver transplant, metabolic stroke, cerebral palsy from the stroke, and we also got an autism diagnosis. There were many nights that I would stay up crying, thinking, what can I do for him? Because I feel like everything I'm doing here is not working. Dr. Crawford takes us back, and he was looking over Luke, talking to him. He didn't treat Luke like any of his diagnosis, not one of them. He was looking at Luke to treat Luke what works best for him. This is a place of miracles. So before, I could never get Luke to dress himself. And the other morning I had his clothes laid out for him, and I was in the bathroom getting ready, and I walked back into the bedroom and he had already gotten himself dressed. He was completely nonverbal from the stroke, so never said a word, but he has started to talk. I was like, you get to go to clinic today and see all your friends. And I was like, are you ready to go now? And he said, yeah. And now he's trying, every night he's trying to sound out words. He actually sits at night and in bed and wants me to read to him. He's never done that before. He was not ever using utensils. And I've made videos of him since being here of eating his first cup of ice cream, literally from Chick-fil-A, because he can do it now. I just have so much hope for Luke's future, and just seeing the things that he's done in 4 weeks. I can't imagine what it's going to look like for him when we get home and we're doing home care. Who knows, maybe a year from now I will be sending y'all T-ball pictures and whatever he wants to do.
You're doing awesome, dude.
This place is restoring health, restoring hope to families, and truly changing lives, not only of the patients, but of the families as well.
There's so many that I've worked with virtually through Zoom and things like that, so it's just an honor to be here for multiple reasons. I've been with Team Luke Consulting, I think it's about 3 years now, right, Tim? Something like that, and I was supposed to talk last year, but for some reason, God had a different plan for me. He said, you need to stay in the hospital for a month and suffer a heart attack. So he said, you need to take some time and recover. So I had what was called a widowmaker. So I was told that, I was telling Tim last night, my family was brought together and I was told I had a 98% chance of dying. So a 2% chance of living. So I had to say goodbye to my family. I've done grief work for over 40 years. But when it's reversed, and you say, hey, you need to say goodbye, that's pretty hardcore. And fortunately enough, God had different plans. And I'm able to come to this conference. I was so looking forward to it. So, Tim, thanks. In a short amount of time, I'm going to try to talk about ambiguous loss, but I want to give you some backstory of things. I am the director of grief, loss, and trauma, and I've been blessed. Grief is not something that I chose to go into. Grief and loss is nothing that I had planned. My original course of action, I'm a musician. I still perform today, I do a lot of touring, but the direction of life, like most of us, changes. And we have to learn to adapt and adjust. And it's like, you know what? We can continue to learn from things. So in my studies, I have went on to get my doctorate in psychology. I love psychology, but I never wanted to enter the psychology world per se. I had a variation of a theme. For me, was the understanding of the impact losses are on our life. Because there's a big difference. What I'm talking about today does not mean a death. There's loss of expectation, loss of hope, loss of connection. All these sort of things are encompassed in this. So I am pretty laid back. So I'm open for questions. If they come up, I'm more than happy to answer those things. But I'd like to start us out with the understanding of a model that I developed a number of years ago called the Braakian model of grief processing. Braakian, B-E-R-A-F-I-A-N. Braakian is an old English word. Back in the year 310 it was developed. And it means to rob. To rob, to be taken away from. As time advanced, this word evolved into the word, as we better know it today, as bereavement. In all the years of my work and study, I've never found a better definition of what we go through when we have a loss. We feel robbed, don't we? We want that person back. We want that child back. We want that child unharmed. So when we have that word Braakian, to me it's the most powerful definition because it helps us understand there's an emptiness, maybe a sadness, a hole in the heart. The Braakian motto is, as I mentioned, the bereavement, I talked about that. And then another term that I really want to emphasize is amelioration of grief. It's a kind of a fancy term that grief takes time, only if you work at it. Grief and loss doesn't magically go away, does it? Wake up one morning and it's gone. But with intentional work, we can make an understanding, a processing that goes through to help us better appreciate each day. And I think that's what we really need to break it down to. All of you are experiencing that, aren't you? Taking it day by day, moment by moment, and we learn how to survive. So, just some terminology to look through. But ambiguous loss. How many of you in here can tell me what ambiguous loss is? Yes.
The loss of someone as you knew them, but you still have to continue to care for them.
Yes. Perfect. Perfect. Loss of someone you knew, but things have changed. A lot of that example, I am a consultant with the ALS Association. Remember years ago there was a bucket challenge? So I work with that team out in Philadelphia. And ALS is a very devastating disease. But it's the loss of the functioning. How many of you know of anyone that has dementia? Very devastating disease. But when I'm saying that in context, that disease, there's losses every day, but yet we still love. And that's the complicating thing, because it can be reversed too. We can have a physical body that's not present, like missing in action, a prisoner of war. any of those things. So we have a spiritual connection. So that's the twofold part of ambiguous loss. We have a loss of your child per se. And I'm not saying their death, but the injury, be it medical issues or all these sort of things, make it a little bit more complex, doesn't it? And sometimes we see gains, sometimes there's setbacks. But I look at, like Tim talked about yesterday, or last night when we were visiting, and this morning, Luke, hope. That to me are so much power, to have hope, because things can, and I do believe things will change as the research continues to go on and on. And imagine, you look back medically, how things have changed in just a short time. 5 years makes a difference, doesn't it? It may seem like an eternity for many, but a few years' time can make a medical impact. What if there was a medication? What if there was a procedure that could help bring back the cognition? Well, a dear friend of mine that's a physician in Tucson works on a lot of research. And believe me, there are things that potentially could change, particularly with concussions, brain injury things. There's hope. That's what I'm getting at, is that, you know what? There's hope in what we look at. So this is a name I want you to remember. Dr. Pauline Boss. She is about 91 years old now, but absolutely a wonderful lady. We were both keynote speakers a couple years ago at an international death conference. She is remarkable. If you can read any of her books, I would strongly encourage it. I long and short think it would help us have a better understanding of what all of you are going through. You're not alone. Look around. It's a community. And that's something that I really want to touch on, is the community of support. And I applaud Tim and Team Luke for that. When I look at grief and loss, I think it's really important that we really strive to do, to me, one of the most important things is the relocation of that grief. The longest journey that you'll ever go on in life is the movement from our headspace down here to our heart. Do you realize how complicated your brain is? And how complex it is? Do you realize how much we convolute and distort some of the thinking that goes on? But if we really truly listen to our heart, that can guide us. That can keep us centered. That can give us the space to do something positive, which all of you are doing, you know that. But it can give you that hope that, you know what, we can endure. We can endure. So again, the longest journey you'll ever make in life basically is from the head to the heart. What I have found in my research is that there are literally thousands and thousands of ways people grieve. And I use that term grief in a large context, so keep that in mind. But there are many ways people grieve. But I have found that there are 4 major ways. The first way is physiologically. Think of it in this way. When we have a loss, when we have a trauma in our life, our first reaction is to absorb it. is to keep it inside. Guess what that does to us?
Makes you sick.
Makes you absolutely sick. Any of you struggle with headaches? Ulcers? Heartburn? How about this one? Any of you by chance have sleep problems? I'm just throwing that out there. How about appetite disruptions? How about some paralysis? In the psychological world, it's called a conversion reaction. I never use those terms, but that's what's used. I've worked with many people that have struggled with conversion reactions, that they become psychologically paralyzed, immobile. That's the impact grief has on us. That's the impact trauma has on us. And even to the extent, any of you ever heard of a thing called broken heart syndrome?
Yes.
What can you tell me about it?
Well, what I know of it is when a loved one dies and then someone else, then they die very soon thereafter of a broken heart.
Correct. The statistics are pretty profound. There is an 8% chance of the other, like an example, if a spouse dies, there's an 8% chance of the other spouse dying within the first week. There's still a 3% chance by the end of the first year. You can't tell me that grief doesn't impact us. I'm very biased. I'll be very upfront. I think grief is one of the hardest things in our world. But our society sucks. Pardon my French. Our society is very inept in dealing with grief and loss. We're supposed to suck it up, get over it, move on. Have you been exposed to that yourself? Well, you have a child, well, you're dealing with it. You're doing a good job. Rah, rah. Where's the compassion? Where's the empathy? Our culture does a bad job. Other cultures that I work with do far better in that community relation. And that's what I think is very important for us to understand, that physical aspect. Pay attention to it in your own life. And I'm going to push this emphasis. Some of you know me from our work, but I push taking care of you. I push taking care of you, because if you don't take care of you, how in the world can you take care of somebody else? If you're not feeding yourself, how can you feed others? So, physical loss. Second way we grieve is cognitive grief. Our brains, you know, are amazing. Amazing organ. We know that there's a right and left hemisphere. But there's a tissue in the middle. Oops. You know that? Anyone know what that tissue is? You got it? Thank you. Corpus callosum. What do you know about it?
What connects and communicates each brain to each other.
Absolutely. So we have found that there are literally 200 synapses every single second of the day. Think about how powerful that brain is. But when we have a loss, guess what happens to that corpus callosum? Anyone know? It doesn't necessarily stop communicating. It's a good theory. What happens is it becomes cloudy. And those synapses kind of get disjointed and they don't fire like they should. So how many of you in here, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you in here have lost your car keys? Or what happened to my phone? Or you're at the grocery store going, what was I supposed to pick up? Or that you're driving down the wrong road. This is an example of what people experience when they have that trauma, that loss. The brain becomes unfamiliar. It will come back. Promise me that you'll be patient with yourself. Give it time. It will come back around. But we get frustrated with ourselves because one of the first things I hear is, oh my gosh, I think I'm getting dementia. I hear that all the time. I'm forgetting. I knock it off. It's not happening. It's just be gentle with yourself. So that cognitive grief is pretty powerful. Third way we grieve, I have found, is spiritually. I think one of the hardest questions I hear from people is a 3-letter question. Why? 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 So, I'm going to backtrack that with that question, why? Can anyone in here tell me why? Anyone tell me why? We have a lot of questions though, right? And that why to me is you can't answer it. And I look at in the spiritual context, I come from a faith-based background. I can't do this work without it, but I work with everything. I worked with all belief systems. I have in all my years. But it's universal, that question why. In this I have found that I want to be very honest. And with my faith, I have, in a human form, have a lot of questions for God. That's my belief system. I have a lot of questions for Him. But my context of this is, when I see Him, it really may not be important. That's that human factor that comes in, the whys. But those whys are so powerful because it's broken into 2 subcontexts. One is anger and one is guilt. Just throwing it out there, how many of you in here experienced some anger? Guess what? Look around. You're not alone. Anger is such a powerful, powerful emotion. The problem with anger is, though, what I have found, it comes out in 2 ways. We kind of get angry at other people. We get angry at spouses, at our kids. We get angry at bank tellers, store clerks. Or we get angry at ourselves. Any of you doing any of that? Yeah? How's that working for you? Pretty crappy, isn't it? What if I would say maybe the anger is misdirected? What if I would say maybe you're not really angry at other people? Or maybe you're not really angry at yourself. What you're really angry at is you're angry at the head trauma. At the head trauma. You're angry at the accident. You're angry. Well, let's be real. Let's be honest. I'm angry that this happened. I can deal with that. I can deal with that anger. You have every right to be angry. Who said you shouldn't? But let's take it in the right context. Let's put it where it needs to go. Let's be angry at what happened. Not at people, not at... Because I can guarantee you it's not going to take you anywhere. And you beating yourself up? Oh my gosh. I'm sure that's really helping you, right? All right, so just be aware of that anger directed in the right way. The other subcategory that I talk about is the word guilt. The woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda, coulda. Any of you spinning around that in your head? Yeah? I don't mean to be blunt, but how's that working for you? Drives you crazy? Yeah? Any of you else feel that way? You lose sleep over it, you wake up with that going around in your head. Guilt, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is the most damaging word in our existence. Because you know what guilt is? It's actually the wrong word. Guilt is actually self-anger. If you really break it down, guilt is a great way to continue to punish yourself for something that you have no control over. Think about that. You're punishing yourself for something you have no control over. Again, how's that working for you? So in the nicest way possible that I can say, stop. Be honest with yourself and say, hey, I'm angry that this happened. I'm angry that my child is hurt. But you know what? I'm going to do the best I can today for my child. I'm going to give he or she everything I can to help them cope, to help them do things. That is doing something with it versus sitting there and speculating and thinking that I have this incredible power. That you have this incredible power to go back and change what happened. Can any of you do that? Okay, then please promise me that you take the action and do something versus keeping it spinning around your head, because it does not. You ever think of a gerbil in a cage or a hamster? Any of you have that at home or had that as a kid? And you have that little wheel going around and around, and they get on that wheel and they're really going to town, right? Where are they going? That's your head. Think about it. That's your head just sitting there spinning, going, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just sitting and spinning. So something to keep in mind. Emotional guilt or emotional grief. That's the fourth. That is probably the best definition I've ever heard or defined was a roller coaster ride that you pay a high price for. Your moods are up and down, spinning all around. So how many of you in here have ever heard of a woman by the name of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross? So there's some. Back in 1967, she wrote a book called On Death and Dying. That book became the holy grail of grief work. Up until that time, Sigmund Freud wrote, I think it was in 1922, a grief journal, article in a journal. But up until that time, there was really no research on how we deal and understand grief. So Kubler came up with this concept. She was hired to work with families in a tragedy, a plane crash. And what she did was she observed behaviors from people. She observed people being angry, families denying, families bargaining and saying, God, if you let my loved one live, I'll go to church every day. Anger, denial, bargaining, depression. And anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. Well, I always struggled with the word acceptance. That's just me. But I struggle with that word acceptance. Why do I need to accept something that was taken from me? I found a better word is more walking with, understanding, to be more of an acceptable term per se. So Kubler did a wonderful job in introducing, per se, grief understanding. Nowadays, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of books about grief and loss. But I just want you to keep that in context. Kubler did a wonderful job. But we've evolved a little bit more on the understanding of grief and loss and how it impacts us, impacts our relationships, impacts our society. Again, I have heard so many profound stories in my life. I've heard tragedies over tragedies. I've heard people say, I worked with a woman that was 100 years old. She came into my office and she said, you know, she came with the premise that her husband had died. And as we talked to her husband, they've been married over 70 some years. His body was shutting down. She said, you know what? I'm okay with my husband's death. He was ready to journey home. His body was shutting down. He had a strong belief. But she said, when I was 20 years old, I had a baby girl. And she died in my arms. And the doctor came in and said, I need to take your baby. You need to go home. Have another baby. Pretend this one didn't exist. She said, I thought about my baby girl for 80 years. I remember her face, her smell, but we were never able to talk about her. My children don't even know I had a baby girl. The validation of life. And unfortunately, that was the tradition back in the day. You know, have another one. And I'll share this story on a personal note. I grew up in that environment. I had a brother that died at 9 months old. And I think that probably is what kind of drove my course in life. But my brother was never talked about. He had I guess now it would be like an RSV. And my sister, traditionally, the oldest take care of the youngest, right? And so my sister came home from school. She had a cold. He was exposed. And I grew up in South Dakota. I live in Minnesota, South Dakota. You don't go to the doctors. Maybe once every 5 years or so. So the tradition then was to give a penicillin shot. He had an adverse reaction to the penicillin. So he spent from 5 months to 9 months at Mayo Clinic in the University of Minnesota. He was a candidate for the first heart transplant as a child. He unfortunately died. But like I said, when I was working on my dissertation, nobody talked about death. Nobody talked about loss. And so there was a picture on the wall of our family. And there was my brother Ricky. But nobody ever talked about him. Didn't know what he was like. So that, I think, was the path that kind of steered me in this direction, saying, you know, it's so important to focus on the legacies, the memories. the gifts. I call them gifts. Your child, your children, all have gifts, don't they? What are the gifts you're going to keep? Are you focused on some of the gifts in the past? Or are you, and you can focus on some of the gifts of today too, can't you? Can't they work together? So that's what's important to really to look at when you're looking at where your child was and where they are. So does that make sense? That you still focus on the gifts, not on the accident? That's part of their story. That doesn't define who they are, is it? I hope not. So, just some precursors of statistics. I want to throw a few statistics in here. And I don't want to make it sound dark and gloomy on this, but the reality of life is this. There's close to 8,000 deaths every single day in the United States. In my research, according to the World Health Association, one death impacts 5 people. I think that's baloney. I truly think that's baloney. In my world, one death impacts at least 128 people. Loss impacts many people. With traumatic brain injury, 1 in 10 children experience a traumatic brain injury. Think of how powerful that number is. Think about how powerful that number is. We see a beautiful community here. But think of all the people that are not given the resources. To me, it's powerful. But back to the death aspect, over 30 million people in the United States are impacted by a loss. 30 million. Our population is about 300 million. So 1/10. So then you add TBIs in there. You add ALS. You add dementia. You wonder why our world gets so angry. You wonder why there's losses. Historically, I talked about the lady that saw me that was 100 years old. I don't know if you're morbid like me, but how many of you have been to grave sites? Have you ever noticed that there's children, baby 1, baby 2, they don't give a name to? How sad is that? I look at the validation of life and how important every single day is. Back to those gifts, right? How important those gifts are. Your gift. Your gift. Such a powerful thing. So, I know some of you in here have heard this, so bear with me. I have a few people that I've had the pleasure to work with in some support arenas. But I live in South Dakota, and I've had the pleasure to work with 9 reservations. And I've learned a great deal. I'm 63 years old. I continue to learn. But animals tend to be the best measure of understanding. Animals, to me, teach. I grew up on a farm. I raised cattle and pigs and sheep. Sheep are not very smart. But animals teach. And so I'd like to share with you part of this model that I developed called the Braak model of grief processing, and it involves animals. The first is a turtle. What can you tell me about turtles? They're slow, yes. What else?
Pull into the shells.
Yes. There's many types of turtles, right? Painted, mud, black, boxer, you name it. There's many types. And then there's a relative, and it's a distant relative called the tortoise. It's a different kind of species, but how many of you have ever seen a tortoise? Yeah, tortoises, what can you tell me about them?
They're big.
They're massive, aren't they? They didn't start out that way, though. Think about that. Tortoises can live over 200 years. Isn't that amazing? And I have a friend, again, in Tucson that his neighbor has 2 pet tortoises. Did you realize that tortoises have to be in a will? Yeah, what happens to them? Yeah, so they need to be taken care of. But turtles are very sacred in the native culture, First Nation, as well as the Chinese culture. They're sacred because they're always in touch with the earth. They're always feeling, they're always sensing what's going on. And because of that, they tend to live a long time. Because they live a long time, they become wise. And with that wisdom comes wealth. But when storms come, what do turtles do? I use that term storms in an analogy way. What's the reaction turtles have when storms come? Yeah, they hide where? In their shell. If they can take cover, they will. But their first reaction is to pull into the shell. So please tell me, how does that relate to humans dealing with grief? Yeah. Pull into your shell, right? Now a question. How many of you in here pulled into your shell when your child was injured? Yeah. Has that changed? No. So what you're telling me then, you haven't processed anything. You've just kind of stayed to yourself, right? It ain't working. So, if you find yourself pulling in, recognize that turtle is speaking and nothing's going to change. I can promise you that. Second animal is the wombly, better known as the bald eagle. What can you tell me about the bald eagle? They fly. What else? What can you tell me?
It's like the bird of the United States.
You got it. You got it. It's our national bird. Any of you ever see one up close? They're huge.
They have a 6-foot wingspan.
8 foot. That's a small one. That's a mid-size, you know. Yeah, they're usually about 8 foot wingspan. They sit about 3.5 foot tall. Their visual acuity is roughly a mile away. They can see their prey. They have a 60-to-1 kill ratio. They rarely miss. They mate for life. Their nest, any of you ever see an eagle's nest? There's like a condo. They're 5 foot by 5 foot, 3 foot deep, weighing close to 2 tons. Think of them masterfully creating this on a peak. Think about how architecturally strong that is. They're truly an amazing bird. Their average cruising speed is 100 miles an hour. And they can soar at 200. They are incredible birds. They are very sacred in the native culture. They're sacred because they are considered to be messengers. They carry the prayers of our humanness up to the Creator. And once a prayer is delivered, oftentimes a feather is released. That eagle feather is very sacred. But when storms come, what do eagles do? Hide? Go to their nests? A lot of people tell me that. No, they actually do something very odd to animal behavior. They take off. And they fly above the thunderheads. They fly above the storm. I work with, good or bad, I work with a lot of pilots. And they often say when there's a storm and they're flying their planes, they'll look below and they can see eagles. How does that relate to humans dealing with grief?
Flight.
What's that?
Like fight or flight. Your flight.
Flight, yeah. And I'll spin that a little bit more. That I'll rise above it. I'll keep busy.
Eagle's eye view.
Eagle's eye view, yep. I'll even use the term avoidance. I'll do everything I can to avoid dealing with it. I'll work 80 hours a week instead of 40. Made you smile, didn't it? I'll volunteer more. Wait, I'll do something that no one's ever heard of before. I'll have a drink. I'll have a cocktail. That'll take the edge off. Well, it worked last night. I might as well do it again tonight. 75% of addictions that I work with is grief-based. Think about that. 75% of addictions that I work with is grief-based. The alcohol is not the problem. You have a cocktail every now and then, no big deal. But it says, okay, if I do this last night, it worked. I do this again tonight. You do it 10 times, it becomes a habit. The habit's not the issue. What happens is the body says, I kind of need it. I need it to survive. I'll start to have tremors. I'll have headaches. I can't sleep. All these subsequential things that happen. Then the body starts to break down. So the eagle represents avoidance. The turtle represents isolation. I can promise you with every part of me, neither one is going to help you. But the third animal will. And that is the bison. There is a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, there's misinformation about bison and buffalo. Just to clarify just a technical thing, we have bison here in the United States. We don't have buffalo. Buffalo is actually a different species that lives in different parts of the world. We have the American bison. What can you tell me about the bison? They're massive. They're massive. What else can you tell me about them? Have any of you ever seen one up close? I have. Have you? Yeah. They are nomadic. Their home is where they're at. They are, do you know, I don't know if you know this, they can run faster than horses. They can get up to 40 miles an hour. Faster than horses. Think about it. There's no horse races or bison races. They are very much community-based. They stay together in a herd. Rarely do you ever see a bison by themselves. And they are very protective of their young. If you're really curious, just YouTube it. Google it. Look at Custer, South Dakota. Look at Yellowstone. There's a lot of stupid people. There truly is. I want to get a picture with that cute calf as they go flying 10 feet away. So the bison is very powerful community animal. But when storms come, what do bison do? They get together, they kind of herd up, but they do something unusual to animal behavior. They actually turn and walk into it. They walk into the storm, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because it's hard to breathe. It's hard to move in a storm, isn't it? But if I keep walking into it, you're going to find peace. You're going to find hope. You're going to find ways to say, you know what, I can survive this. I can deal with this because I'm powerful and I have community behind me. To me, the bison is my animal. It's the animal that says, I can do it. I can look at the grief and loss and trauma. I can deal with the injuries of my child, but I can keep walking into it. So keep that in mind in your work. Walking into it is what the best thing that I can suggest. In the personal work of grief, I have found I've had multitudes of losses in my life. Multitudes of losses. But I also know if I keep it in the framework, if I keep my love here, that's what matters. My head messes things up. The heart always remains pure. I worked with a young gentleman from Somalia. He was in the hospital 15 times. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, all this sort of stuff. And roundabout, I was referred to him, or he was referred to me, and we started processing grief and loss and trauma. Well, come to find out that he lived in a small community near Darfur. And his father was a butcher, and they lived in a kind of a small area. They were surrounded by 10 militia. Mother and father were killed. Sister was taken advantage of, and his brother was shot in front of him. He and his other brother were forced to march. His brother fell and was killed. He got to the place, for some reason got connected with a refugee, and ended up in the United States. Looking at his life, do you think he experienced loss? Not only did he lose his family, and he watched some horrific things, but he also lost his community. He had to relocate to another place. So you see the layers of losses and the misdiagnose of things that happen. That's so unfortunate. But when he was able to share and to talk about his family, and his life changed. I'm not saying I did anything. I planted seeds. I planted seeds for people to say, I can do something different with my life. I can look at the loss and do something different. So what I challenge people to do, and this is for all of you to consider, I believe in intentional work. So simply taken, a piece of paper and a pen can do remarkable work. What I encourage you to do is to talk to your child every day on paper. Put down the good, the bad, the frustration, whatever you want. Don't think about what you're saying, be it a ramble. When you're done talking to them, set it down. Get a cup of coffee, come back, read it, and then rip it up. It seems so simple, but it's such a powerful tool to give it a release, to get it from the inside out, to do intentional things with it, and not to hold on to all that negative energy that consumes you. And by and large, that can be a tool to encourage you to feed yourself, so to speak. To say, I got to take care of me in order for me to take care of others. I cannot hound that enough. You've heard it before. But think about it in that. You've got to be fed. You truly, truly need to be fed. So I know I'm running out of time, but I do want to play a song for you. Is that all right? It's just part of my... I don't know if you know of Christabella Braden. Any of you heard of her before? No? Interesting enough, and she's got a lot of music out, but she suffered a traumatic brain injury. If I can get this to play. And I hope you appreciate it. Not giving up. I just thought I'd share that with you because I think the motto is very positive. To say, you know what, like in your own worlds, not giving up. That's that hope, right? The hope that say, you know what, something can be different. I was fortunate enough. I've been truly, truly blessed in my life. I was fortunate to study with a man by the name of Rabbi Earl Grolman. I'm not Jewish, but I love his teachings. He was my mentor for many, many years. He actually was Dr. Kubler-Ross's first teacher. And so when I challenge people to say there is work involved with grief and processing the trauma, I truly mean it. It's not easy. But if you're like that bison walking into it, anything can be possible. Can I share your... All right. So I'm going to put Miss Amber on a spot here.
Am I like walking around?
No,
Okay.
but she did something that was pretty powerful to me.
Oh, wow.
She put a little bison on her wrist. As that reminder, I'm not saying you have to do that. But I'm just saying as a reminder that if you work at it, if you push it, anything can be possible. Give yourself the grace to make that happen. So, questions at all? And in a small world, can I put another person on the spot? This young lady over here, we grew up like 10 miles apart. A small world, if you think about it. Seriously, it was about 10 miles apart. And we meet here. Pretty wild. So, questions again. I am truly an open book. I love, but I'll be strong. How about that? I'm pretty confrontive too.
Back to when we were talking earlier about the 4 stages of grief, you were saying not to really direct anger at people, and to be angry at the accident itself. What if the lines get muddled there and you're angry at the person that caused the accident? Even still, while it's a balance of you try to, whatever you want to call it, empathy or sympathy, you try and give that because you try to see it from their side, but then the anger continues due to their way in the accident, their way of handling it.
How about, can I spin it in a different way?
Of course.
Can I challenge you to ask yourself, how is this helping me?
It doesn't, and I already have.
Then that's your stop point. Because if it's not helping you, then you need to stop. You're wasting that energy. Direct the anger where it needs to be. If you're angry at that person, so be it. But don't let that anger control who you are as a person. That's not who you are.
Yes.
So don't give that person the power.
I'm just like wondering, how do we make it productive?
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to vary it, to say don't give them the power. I want you to have the power.
How do I take that power?
Say it's mine. This is what I'm going to do with it. Write it out. Talk to your child. Talk about the situation. Talk about the accident. Set it down. Come back. Read it and say, if this is productive, then I continue to write about it. If it's not, stop. I've worked with presidents. I've worked with Congress, legislators, I've worked with homeless people, I've worked with all variations of people in life.
Write it out. I have a question on that, and I think I already know the answer, but I'm still going to ask it. What if when we write it out and we read it, we don't feel like it needs to be ripped up? What if we feel like the person that caused the damage should see it and read it? Or is that...
How is it helping you? Is it going to change that person?
I don't know if it'll change that person, but my son wants me to write a letter to the man that hit him, asking for an apology.
What if it doesn't happen?
And I've told him a couple times that even if we write it, there's
no guarantee
chance that he would respond or anything.
But he can write, you can write how you're responding to it. And continue to write the same darn thing 20 zillion times if you want. There will come a point to say, you know what, it's not going to have control over me anymore. You know, my focus, my love is right here, right now.
Thank you.
If that helps.
It does.
You can tell me to shut up too, okay?
No,
But
thank you.
yeah.
It does help.
How do we convey that to a child, though? Like,
that's where you're talking to your child every day. Use that as a filter. The paper, in essence, becomes a filter. You know, it's like a coffee filter, as dumb as it sounds. You put the grounds in and you wait for the coffee to happen. That filter is, then you throw it away. Then you say, I don't need it anymore. You stay focused on the moments. So, yes?
So my child was injured as a teenager, and things he had anticipated doing with his life, he wasn't able to do as a result. But when I see his peers making milestones and doing some of these accomplishments,
Some envy.
how do I, for example, my son wanted to be in the military, but because of his head injury, he can't be. But he has peers that got to go to the academies, they got to,
Sure.
getting, we get all those letters of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Stuff
The
comes
pride.
home,
Yeah.
How do you deal with the pain that brings up every time that somebody else?
Are you talking your pain or his pain?
I probably have a harder time with it than he does.
So use that technique.
What do you mean?
Just write it out. Basically write to your son. You don't have to give it to him, but saying, this is what I see, this is what I experience, the hopes, the dreams that you wanted. And just use that as that filter to say, okay, I don't need to carry this. What I'm getting at, in essence, is trying to get it from the inside out. Because what I'm hearing you say is that you see this and you're just constantly reminded of the what ifs.
Right, and watching him struggle trying to figure out, well, that's what I wanted to do and I can't, and he's still trying to figure out his path.
Yeah. And that's the technique, though. It will figure out if you trust in finding that in your heart. You won't get stuck in that. I don't say stuck. I don't mean that in the bad way. But I won't have you get lost in the woulda, shoulda, couldas.
I'm sorry, get lost.
In the woulda, shoulda, couldas. But get focused on, this is what I have here and now. And this is what I can appreciate and be thankful for. And recentering it. If that makes sense. Just to focus on the day. To break it down. And I don't know the severity of the TBIs or those types of things, because we all know there's variation.
Right.
But we also know there's healing neurologically that goes on too. So if he can't join the military, maybe there could be another way of doing things. Yeah. So like I said, I don't know the severity of that, but it doesn't mean that he still can't be a part of it. There's always ways. I don't believe in giving up. I'm a fighter that way. Okay, I get it. So I don't know if that answered that completely, but it challenges them to look at it and for you to say, okay, how am I going to let this part go? And focus on what I do have. The gift.